Greetings, I'm Merswynd of Caudor, and I'd like to welcome you to Pennsic University class, How to Make a Canopy Bed. And like all my furniture projects, it packs as flat as something from IKEA and assembles in minutes. I decided I wanted to take a canopy bed to Pennsic. No reason, other than that bringing a large and impractical object on a camping trip seemed like a good idea. And besides, canopy beds have been a thing at Pennsic for a long time. I'd be part of a tradition. I was confident I could build a canopy bed of my own. After all, I've made beds before. How hard could it be? Last time, I took the design for a traditional camp bed and built it to the longer and narrower dimensions of a camping cot. I thought it turned out pretty well. Unable to leave well enough alone, I thought about how to turn the camp bed into a canopy, and it seemed to me that all I had to do was widen the headboard and make the bedposts taller. Simple. These are the parts of the bed: pine boards, wooden posts, and a sheet of plywood. Not shown in the drawing, but still important, are the bed rail connectors and the wooden stops that hold up the plywood platform. Here are the overall dimensions of the bed. It's queen-sized, 60 by 80 inches, and the bedposts are 6 feet tall. The finished project should look about like this. This is the finished bed. It's exactly twice the width of two of my camp beds, so the plywood and the mattresses from the camp beds fit on it just fine, which supports the 2 sheets of plywood from the smaller beds. The headboard was so big I had to take it apart to get it in the car, which meant adding a second set of bed rail connectors. Or as they say, it's not a problem, it's an expense. The entire bed comes apart and packs flat. I can take the whole bed apart and pack it for travel in about 10 minutes. The entire canopy bed reduces to a stack only 4 inches tall. And like all the furniture I make for Pennsic, it fits in the car. The double bed needs 2 sets of connectors, but there's a problem. There's not enough room on the bedpost for both of them, and they interfere with each other. To make them both fit, I had to move one of them to the side. Unfortunately, it pushed the rail away from the post, which made the side rail stick out, exposing the end grain. There's nothing structurally wrong with that, but I think the rail looks nicer when it's flush with the bedpost. Fortunately, this is easy to fix. Shimming one of the connectors allows both rails to lie flush against the post. It doesn't make the bed any stronger, but it looks nice. This is how it looks in real life. The shim is half the width of the post and about 1/8 of an inch thick. The connectors are staggered so the screws won't run into each other. Note how, when we use a shim, none of the rails stick out beyond the post. And then someone asked me how much weight the bed could hold. I thought about the design we had built and began second-guessing myself, because that is what I do. The issue was this: I'd made the new bed larger, but I hadn't made it any stronger. Most people expect a double bed to hold more than one person, but this one couldn't. Because no one wants to experience a structural collapse in the middle of the night. On closer examination, it appeared that if the bed were to fail, It would be because the screws that held the connectors in place pulled out of the wood. Therefore, there should be as little stress on the connectors as possible. To do that, I gave the side rails something to rest on, in the form of a vertical stop nailed to the side of the post. With the rail resting on the stop, there's almost no strain on the connector. Both the side rail and the headboard were given vertical stops to rest on, as both of them carry the weight placed on the bed. But even with the load taken off the connectors, there's still a question of if the single rail is strong enough to support the platform. Is it strong enough? Maybe. Probably. But in case it isn't, I decided to experiment with a more robust structure. So here's what we have. The platform rests on two center rails, which in turn rest on two legs apiece. This takes almost all the weight off the connectors. So how much will it hold? There's one way to find out. I'm laying down plywood to make a stage to stand on. In the name of science, other family members were recruited, against their will, to take part in structural testing. People walking dogs and pushing baby strollers observed us from the sidewalk. At least we're already the weird neighbors. We learned that the structure can support 700 pounds, to which daughter number 2 said, "I can't believe you actually did the math." The connector is no match for the long lever arm of the bedpost. This makes the four-poster bed more wobbly than a conventional bed. It turns out that the canopy frame, which I thought served no purpose beyond holding up the canopy, acts as a brace that makes the bed structure rigid. Once the canopy frame has been installed, the bed is much more stable. Finally, you might choose to top your bedposts with finials. Finials were invented to keep rainwater from running through the grommets for the tent pole pins, but they're also ornamental. I stole the finials from my tent poles for the bed. The tent isn't going to miss them. I always mean to install them on the tent pole pins, but the tops of the poles are higher than I can reach, and I never quite get to it. I made the cover from a rectangle of canvas the same size as the mattress. The valances are 4 long rectangles sewn from a more expensive fabric. A grommet was installed in each corner for the finial peg. Once the bed is completely assembled, and put the grommet over the peg on top of the tent pole. It's easier to drape the valance over the frame from inside. I like to put the canopy on first and then tuck the slats underneath it. 3 slats are enough to support the canvas cover. I pinned the curtains to the inside of the valances. I'm not saying that's a good way to do it, I just didn't have a better idea. Here's the finished project. It can be done with simple tools, ordinary lumber, and a beginner's level of skill. The sun rises early at Pennsic, or at least it seems like it, and lights up the canvas tent walls at about 6 in the morning. Wouldn't it be nice to have some heavy curtains to pull around the bed, so you could sleep in? I looked at a couple of ways to hang the inner curtains, mostly involving a rope. I tied a half hitch around the bedpost, but it slid down the pole. I drilled a hole in the bedpost and threaded a rope through it, but the rope still sagged in the middle. I should have realized that this was already a solved problem, and it's called curtain rods. Hang a curtain rod from a hook in the bedpost, and even heavy curtains will hang straight. I've been talking about heavy blackout curtains, But you might also want to hang mosquito netting. Again, avoiding a gap at the top really makes a case for using a curtain rod. Now, because my projects generally start out small and reasonable before they spin out of control, my early plans for a simple canopy quickly became more ambitious. That's right, I'm talking full Jacobean, dark wood, an architectural structure enclosing the valance, and embroidered curtains, preferably hand-embroidered crewel work on linen. To review what we've done so far, the sides of the canopy cover hung over the frame. To make the Jacobean version of the bed, I used thicker rails. The canopy cover is the same shape as before, but it hangs on the inside of the rail. It's nicer if you can't see the ends of the slats from outside. So I nailed a stop inside the rail for the slats to rest on. The valances at the head and foot of the bed hang over the slats, which were moved outward to accommodate them. I thought I'd need 5 slats total, but it turned out that 3 was plenty. This is the finished canopy bed. The thicker upper rail makes the bed look more substantial, while increasing the overall size and weight by only a small amount. Now, how well does a canopy bed fit into a tent? Sometimes the bed gets pressed up against the tent pole, but sometimes the only way to make things work is to have the tent pole go through the bed. That's how it was for me. I ran out of floor space about 6 inches before I ran out of bed. So what can I do about it? Well, it turns out the design I happen to use is friendly to tent poles. When I replaced the center rail with 2 center rails, I created a space for the tent pole to pass through. And because I borrowed 2 sheets of plywood from the camp beds to support the mattress, I could cut a small notch so the tent pole could pass between them. The canopy cover already had a seam down the middle because the fabric hadn't been wide enough to make the cover from a single piece. All I had to do was open the seam to accommodate the tent pole. You can see the opened seam in this picture. The valance behind it is made from 2 pieces, which overlap and are pinned shut to conceal the gap. This slit was made the same way, as a reopened seam, but it was too hard to hide the slit in the valance, which unfortunately faced into the room. So I made the valance as a single piece and attached it to the cover with Velcro. The one-piece valance looked much better. To summarize, you can make a canopy bed by taking the design of a camp bed and then making it taller and wider. Add a sturdy understructure to support the platform, and sew a canopy cover and some curtains. Tent poles can go right through the bed. Here's how it looks when it's finished. The parts are held together with bed rail connectors, and it all breaks down into a stack only 4 inches high. Who would have thought you could get a canopy bed into the car? But as it turns out, it's no problem. Thanks for watching, and I hope you found some ideas you can use. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to contact me at yuvathathehorseman@gmail.com. Right?